She is already on the bus. Nobody put her there. Nobody carried her. Nobody called her name. She just walked up the steps, quietly, the way she always does, and found the third seat on the left, the one by the window, the one that faces the road. She sits perfectly still, and she waits. Wait, before we find out why a cat is riding the school bus every morning like she pays taxes, drop where you're watching from in the comments, smash that like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who thinks they've seen everything. We're on a mission to hit 1,000 subscribers, and honestly, if a cat can show up every single day without giving up, the least you can do is hit subscribe. It is early, the kind of early where the light hasn't decided what color to be yet. The parking lot is nearly empty. A few cars, a few pigeons, the low hum of an engine warming up. The school bus sits at the edge of the lot with its door still open, exhaust curling up into the cold air. The yellow paint faded just slightly along the bottom edge from years of salt and rain. And there she is. A small gray cat, white paws, a notch in one ear, the kind that comes from something that happened a long time ago and healed wrong. She is not large, she is not young. She sits with her front legs pressed together, her tail wrapped tight around her feet, her eyes fixed on the windshield, not looking at anyone, looking through. The driver, a man named Gerald, who has been doing this route for 11 years, noticed her on a Tuesday. He didn't do anything about it. He just looked at her in the rearview mirror for a moment, rubbed his jaw, and pulled out of the lot. She rode the whole route. All 14 stops. She didn't meow, didn't move, didn't ask for anything. She just sat in that window seat watching the neighborhood pass, the brick houses and the oak trees and the crossing guards in their orange vests, with the calm of something that had made up its mind a long time ago and hadn't changed it since. When the last child got off, Gerald pulled back into the lot, cut the engine, and turned around. The seat was empty. He walked down the aisle, checked under each bench, looked out the windows. She was gone. He stood there for a moment with his hand on the back of a seat, not sure what he had just experienced. Then he locked up and went home. Wednesday. She was back. Same seat, same stillness. This time, a few of the kids saw her before they boarded. A pair of second-grade girls stopped at the bottom of the steps and looked up at the cat, then at each other. One of them laughed, a bright, uncomplicated laugh, the kind children have before the world teaches them to muffle things. "There's a cat on the bus," she said. "I know," said the other, like it was already old news. They sat 2 rows behind her. They didn't pet her, didn't try to move her. They just whispered to each other and watched her, the way you watch something that doesn't know it's being watched. Gerald said nothing. He just drove. By Thursday, the cat had a name. The kids called her Maple. Not because anyone agreed on it, not because it was voted on. It just happened, the way things in childhood happen, organically and immediately and without question. One boy said it and it stuck. "Maple's in her seat. Maple came back. Gerald, is Maple coming today?" Gerald always said he didn't know, but he always checked before pulling out. By the second week, word had gotten around. Parents started appearing at the bus stop a few minutes earlier than usual. Not to see their children off, or not only for that. They stood at the edge of the sidewalk with their coffee cups, glancing at the yellow rectangle of bus, looking for the small gray shape in the third window. Some of them laughed about it. A cat riding the school bus only in this town. Some of them took pictures. But one of them didn't laugh. A woman named Sandra. She stood at the corner of Birch and Maple, and yes, now the street name felt like something, with her arms crossed over her chest and her coffee going cold in her hand. She was watching Maple through the bus window, and her face was doing something that didn't quite fit the moment. Not laughing, not smiling, just looking. Her son, a boy named Eli, was in 5th grade. He had dark circles under his eyes and a backpack that seemed too heavy for his frame. He sat 1 seat behind Maple, and every morning, without anyone telling him to, he put his hand out and let the cat sniff his fingers. Maple always did, and then she always turned back to the window. Gerald started asking around, quietly, casually, the way people do when they don't want to make something bigger than it is, but they can't stop thinking about it. He asked the school secretary. He asked the afternoon crossing guard. He asked the woman at the diner where he ate breakfast every morning, because she knew everyone and everything in a 3-mile radius. Nobody knew the cot. Nobody had seen her before that Tuesday. She didn't have a collar, she was thin but not sick, she was clean but not groomed. She was, as near as anyone could tell, a cot that belonged to nobody, or maybe to a nobody who was no longer there. And every morning, she was there, on that bus, and every afternoon, she was gone. Nobody ever saw her get on. Nobody ever saw her leave. She was simply there, and then she wasn't, and the day filled in the gap around her the way water fills around a stone. Gerald started wondering if she was lost. Then he started wondering if she was looking for something. Then one morning, watching her in the mirror, that small, still shape staring out at the street, he had a thought he couldn't shake. What if she wasn't looking for something? What if she was waiting for someone? And then someone finally followed her. It was a Friday. The afternoon route was done, the last kid dropped off, and Gerald was making the slow loop back toward the depot. Maple had done what she always did, been in her seat all morning, gone by afternoon. But this time, one of the girls from the back of the bus, the one who had laughed that first morning, the one with braids and a purple backpack, had stayed on past her stop. Gerald noticed when he looked in the mirror. "Rosie, you missed your stop." "I know," she said. "I want to see where the cat goes." Gerald drove for another moment in silence. Then he pulled over. He called Rosie's mother. He explained. The mother, remarkably, said, "Just keep her with you. I'll meet you." He turned the bus around, slowly, back through the neighborhood, and there, in the fading light of 4 in the afternoon, he saw Maple. She was walking, alone, down the sidewalk on the east side of Birch Street, unhurried, moving with a certainty that didn't look like wandering. She knew exactly where she was going. Gerald followed at idle speed. Rosie pressed her face to the window. Maple turned left at the corner. Then she stopped. In front of a small house with a white fence and an unlit porch light. She sat down at the base of the front steps, and she waited. Gerald parked. He sat for a moment. Then he got out. "Okay, you cannot close this tab right now. We are deep in a mystery, and you're just gonna leave? Comment where you're watching from, because I need to know what part of the world is sitting with their mouth open right now. Like, share, subscribe. Help us hit 1,000 before Maple finds what she's looking for, or close, on both missions." The house was quiet. Not the quiet of a house where people are simply inside going about their day. The other kind, the settled kind, the kind that has been sitting in a place for a while. There were leaves on the porch, old ones, not from this week. A newspaper on the walkway, still in its plastic sleeve, soaked through. Maple had not moved. She was sitting at the bottom of the steps, her eyes on the door, patient as stone. Gerald went next door. He knocked. An older woman came to the door, late 70s, a dish towel over her shoulder, reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. He pointed at the house. "Do you know who lives there?" The woman looked at the house, then at Gerald, then at Maple, still sitting at the steps. She pressed her lips together, let out a slow breath. "A boy," she said. His name was Owen. Was. Owen had been 11 years old, 5th grade. He had lived in that house with his mother for the last 3 years after his parents separated. He had found Maple, or Maple had found him, depending on how you looked at it, the winter before last, when she showed up on the back porch half frozen and he fed her his leftover chicken without asking anyone. She had never really left after that. The neighbor, whose name was Elaine, told Gerald all of this slowly, pausing in the places where the words were harder to carry. Owen had gone to school every morning on the number 7 bus, Route 14. She'd watched him walk to the stop every day for 3 years. And Maple had walked him every morning, from the front door to the stop at the corner of Birch. Every afternoon, she'd be waiting when the bus came back. Owen's mother had taken ill suddenly in November. He had gone to stay with his grandmother 2 towns over. It was supposed to be temporary, a few weeks, maybe a month. He hadn't been able to take Maple with him. He'd left food out, left the back porch door cracked, asked Elaine to check in. But Elaine was 81 and had her own complications, and Owen's mother hadn't recovered as quickly as anyone had hoped. Weeks had passed. Maple had stayed. And every morning, for 6 weeks now, she had walked to the bus stop at the corner of Birch and waited for a boy who didn't come. When the bus arrived and the door opened, she got on. She took the seat Owen always took, the third one on the left, the one by the window, the one that faces the road. And she waited. Gerald stood on that sidewalk for a long time. Rosie's mother had arrived by then. She was standing next to her daughter, one hand on the girl's shoulder. Neither of them said anything. Rosie had her face turned toward Maple, and she wasn't laughing now, not with cruelty, not at all, just quiet. The way children get quiet when they understand something for the first time that they'll spend the rest of their lives understanding over and over. Elaine went inside and came back with a bowl of water and a tin of tuna she'd had in the cupboard for who knows how long. Maple ate slowly. Then she went back to the steps and sat down again. Gerald called the school on Monday morning before he started his route, spoke to the principal, who spoke to the school counselor, who happens to know Owen's grandmother, because in a town like this, people know each other in the sideways, unexpected ways that matter most. The grandmother answered on the second ring. She listened. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "He asks about that cat every single day." There were details to sort out. There always are. Owen's mother was still in the hospital, stable now, but slow going. His grandmother was a small woman in a small house and had been managing as best she could. It wasn't a simple situation. It was the kind of situation that has no clean edges. But some things happened. Elaine started leaving food at the back porch every morning. She got a proper bowl. She found an old blanket she didn't need anymore and folded it on the bottom step. Gerald started pulling up to the stop at Birch 1 minute earlier than the schedule set. The parents at the stop started noticing when Maple wasn't there, and on the mornings she wasn't, there was a small, unnamed worry that settled over the group before it dispersed. The children, Rosie and the boy who had named her and a dozen others, started leaving things on the third seat on the left. Small things. A treat they'd bought with their own allowance. A folded piece of paper. One morning, a drawing of a cat that could have been Maple or could have been any cat, but was unmistakably made with love. Nobody told them to. Nobody organized it. It just happened. The way things happen when people are trying, in the only language they have, to say something that doesn't have words. Eli, Sandra's son, the boy who sat behind Maple every morning, brought a photograph one Tuesday. A printed one, the kind that costs $1 at the pharmacy. It was a photo of himself and Owen taken at a birthday party the previous spring, both of them squinting into the sun, both of them laughing at something off camera. He didn't show it to anyone. He just looked at it for a moment, and then he looked at Maple, and then he tucked it under the edge of the seat, between the vinyl and the metal frame, where it would be safe. Sandra, watching from the stop, said nothing. She just uncrossed her arms. There is a particular kind of grief that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with noise. It doesn't demand attention. It sits in a window. It walks a route. It waits at a door. It does the same thing it has always done because the habit of love is the last thing to go, because maybe it is the only thing that doesn't, really. Maple didn't know she was teaching anyone anything. She was simply doing what she knew how to do, going where she had always gone, waiting for the thing she had always waited for. The bus became a strange and tender place in those weeks. Children who had barely spoken to each other started sitting a little closer. A boy in the back, who was known mostly for ignoring everyone, asked one morning if anyone knew how Owen was doing. The question hung in the air for a moment, and then Rosie said she'd heard from her mom that he was coming back for Thanksgiving. Maybe. Maybe. A small sound moved through the bus. Not cheering. Something quieter. Meeple sat in her seat and looked out the window. Gerald watched all of this in the mirror. He had been driving this route for 11 years, and in 11 years he had watched children grow up one stop at a time. He had watched them get bigger, louder, more complicated. He had watched them disappear into middle school and high school and eventually not be on the bus anymore. He had understood his job as something simple and mechanical and good. He was reconsidering. There was a Thursday, the fourth Thursday of November to be exact, when Gerald was running his route and the bus reached the stop at Birch and Maple Street. He stopped. He opened the door. And standing at the bottom of the steps, backpack on his back, looking up at the bus with an expression that contained everything, relief and longing and something almost like apology, was Owen. He was a thin boy, dark-haired. He was wearing a jacket that was slightly too small for him, the sleeves ending just about his wrists the way kids grow without anyone being able to stop it. He stepped up into the bus, and Maple, who had not moved, who had not made a sound, who had sat in perfect stillness through 14 stops in 6 weeks, turned. She turned from the window. She turned toward him, and she made a sound, not loud, not dramatic, a small, rough sound that came from somewhere deep in her chest, the sound of a thing that has been holding itself very still for a very long time. Owen sat down. Third seat on the left, the one by the window. Maple climbed into his lap. She put her head down, her eyes closed. Nobody said anything. Not one child, not Gerald, not one at any of the stops they passed through on the rest of that route. Some silences are full. Some silences are the only appropriate response. Owen's mother came home in December. Slowly, with help, with the particular kind of fragile determination that is different from strength, but is somehow more moving than strength because you can see the effort underneath it. Maple came home with Owen. She still walked to the bus stop every morning, still waited on the steps when the afternoon bus came. The habit, it seemed, had become part of something larger than it started as. She was not just walking a boy to a stop anymore. She was doing the thing that she had always done, and now the whole neighborhood had organized itself quietly around it. Elaine kept leaving the water bowl on the bottom step. Gerald kept pulling up 1 minute early. Sandra uncrossed her arms every morning and watched until the bus was gone and then went back inside. Rosie left a treat on the third seat on the left every Friday. She said it was a tradition. She was 8, and she had decided it was a tradition, and so it was. The photograph Eli had tucked under the seat was still there. Nobody had moved it. Nobody would. There's something in this story that is hard to name. Not hard to feel, hard to name. A cat does not understand absence the way we do. She cannot parse the reasons. She cannot be told, he's coming back, be patient, wait. She has no language for temporary or situation or recovery. She only has the geometry of her days, the same corner, the same steps, the same door, the same window seat. And in that geometry, she kept the place of something that wasn't there. She held the place. That is what she did. She held his place on the bus the way you hold a seat for someone who has stepped away, the way you leave a light on, the way you set the table for one more person than is actually there, because the habit of them is so deep it outweighs the fact of them. Love doesn't know how to stop. It doesn't get the memo. It keeps showing up. It keeps walking to the corner. It keeps waiting by the door. It gets on the bus. It takes the window seat. It stares at the road. And it waits. Some mornings now, Eli gets to the stop a little early. Not for any reason he could name. He just does. He stands at the corner of Birch and Maple, and sometimes Owen is already there, 2 boys with backpacks looking down the road. And sometimes he isn't, not yet. And Eli just stands and waits, the way you do, the way she taught him to. And the next morning, the bus stopped again. Gerald opened the door, and this time, everyone was already looking for her. A cat waited 6 weeks for a boy she loved, and you can't wait 3 seconds to hit subscribe? Come on now. Drop where you're watching from, share this with one human who needs it today, and help us hit 1,000 subscribers. Because if this story didn't convince you that showing up matters, I don't know what will. Like, subscribe, share. See you next time. Pal.